In the Mexican desert, a man is digging through some debris and accidentally finds a hidden hole on the ground containing a Nazi flag wrapped around a spearhead. As soon as he touches it, a dark force takes over his body, which now moves on its own. When he tries crossing the road, a car suddenly hits him, only for the vehicle to get smashed. A creepy symbol then appears on the man's wrist and he just keeps going as if nothing happened. Meanwhile, in an apartment in Los Angeles, a mother opens a door and screams when she sees her daughter snarling on the ceiling. The family immediately seeks help, but Father Hennessy doesn't have the skills to deal with this, so he calls John Constantine to do it. John is an expert in everything supernatural, like exorcisms and demonology. He's also a chainsmoker. John finds the possessed girl tied to her bed and opens a window to let the sunlight in, which the girl hates. Attacked by a demon covered in insects. A powerful hit sends John flying and he accidentally drops the box with his weapon, so he has to struggle against the demon's hold as it tries to choke him. Using a piece of a sign, John hits the demon to push him away and finally grabs the box, but before he can open it, the demon attacks again. There is more struggle as they rush down the street, only for John to throw the box away and let a car crash into the demon, killing it. Then John stomps on any insect left. Afterward, John and Chaz go to Midnight's nightclub, a place where the supernatural hangs out. A test at the door checks if visitors can see the drawing on a card and John is allowed inside, but Chaz is turned down because he doesn't have the power. Inside the club, people are enjoying the debauchery, but John ignores them to enter the back room, where he meets the owner, Papa Midnight. He's a powerful occultist who, unlike John, has decided to stay neutral in the fight of heaven versus hell. John tells him about the demon that attacked him, but Midnight doesn't believe him because the rules accepted by both sides say pure demons can't wander Earth. They're then interrupted by the half-breed demon Balthazar, who keeps playing with a coin as he teases John. When John threatens him back, Midnight cuts in and reminds them his club doesn't accept hostility. Another coughing fit suddenly overtakes John, so he has to rush out. Later at home, John is visited by Angela, who wants his help because she thinks Isabel was forced to self-delete by someone else. However, John thinks she's just desperate for his sister to go to heaven and turns her down. At that moment he sees shadows outside chasing Angela, so he goes after her and decides her case may be connected to the recent demonic incidents. Angela explains she doesn't believe in demons when suddenly the lights around them start going out one by one except for a Mary statue in a display window. Weird windy noises are coming from above, and John explains they're from flying creatures while taking out a piece of fabric. When he lights it up with a holy glow, he exposes the demons surrounding them, who immediately get burned down to ashes. Angela throws up from the sulfur and John points out the demons are after her, not him. Agreeing to take Angela's case, John decides to visit hell to see if Isabel is there, which would indicate that she truly self-deleted. At Angela's apartment, he puts his feet into a basin of water that will work as a conduit and asks Angela to leave before grabbing her pet because cats have a connection to the supernatural. By staring into the cat's eyes, John creates a link and time stops around him before he appears in hell. With holy water at hand for protection, John walks through the horrible landscape of hell, ignoring the raging wind, the demons, and the damned souls until he finds Isabel at the edge of a building. As demons surround them, Isabel says John's name and takes off her medical tag, so John chases after it. While Isabel falls, the demons chase after John and jump to attack him. Once he has the tag, John breaks a bottle of holy water on his chest and appears back in Isabel's apartment, expelling smoke from his whole body. He gives the tag back to Angela while confirming that Isabel did self-delete and she's damned for it. Meanwhile, Hennessy sneaks into the morgue to find Isabel's corpse. He tries to read her memories by grabbing her arm, but at that moment a creepy mark appears on her wrist, which makes Hennessy back away in fear. Terrified, he tries to drink from his flask, yet not a single drop falls. At that moment a guard finds him, so Hennessy rushes to a store and desperately tries to drink from any alcohol bottle he can find, but the liquid never falls. After smashing a bunch of bottles, Hennessy collapses again and begins to choke, so with his last breath he uses a bottle opener to draw on his hand. Suddenly Balthazar appears playing with his coin and enjoys watching Hennessy slowly die as it's revealed he made an illusion to make the priest think there was no liquid, but he's actually choking on tons of it. Back to John, he explains to Angela that as a kid, he was already able to see all kinds of supernatural entities. Not knowing what to do, his parents sent him to a mental institution to be treated, which made it worse. Feeling scared and outcast, young John tried to self-delete, and he was officially dead for 2 minutes. However, in hell time moves more slowly, so he feels like he was down there for a lifetime. The paramedics brought him back and John finally accepted that everything he could see was real. Because of his terrible sin, his soul will go to hell, so he works exorcising demons hoping it will earn him salvation. Heaven and hell have a bet over who can win humanity's souls and they create half-breeds like Gabriel and Balthazar, who whisper things to people to make them better or worse. Their chat is interrupted when Angela gets a call about Hennessy's death and the duo immediately goes to the scene. John notices a bloody mark on Hennessy's palm, which is the same symbol Isabel and the Mexican guy had. Hennessy left it for John. After making a copy, John sends it to Beeman for research. Afterward they go to Isabel's hospital room and John snaps at Angela, trying to force her to think of anything that could serve as a clue. Angela finally remembers that as kids they had a secret way to communicate with each other and she breathes on the window, fogging it up to reveal the message Corinthians 17, which shouldn't exist. As they drive away, they call Beeman, who explains that the Hell Bible has more passages than the traditional Bible. Corinthians 17 talks of the son of the devil called Mammon, who will bring eternal darkness upon humanity and whose symbol is the one from Hennessy's hand. Mammon wants to steal control from Lucifer, and to do that he needs a powerful psychic plus a divine being. Beeman starts stumbling over his words and senses something is coming for him, so he hangs up right before insects start coming out of his eyes. Worried, John and Angela rush to check on Beeman but it's too late, they find him dead and covered in insects. In the meantime, the man carrying the spearhead steals a car and starts driving toward Los Angeles. Back to Angela, she finally admits to John that she and Isabel used to see things as kids too. However, when Isabel was treated for mental illness, Angela started to deny it, and eventually she stopped seeing things. Now she feels like she abandoned Isabel, so she asks John to help her see again. John agrees and fills a bathtub with water, then he makes Angela lie in it. He holds her down even when she starts running out of breath, and Angela struggles against him to no avail. When she finally drowns, time slows down, only to come back to normal in a second. This is enough time for Angela to have visited hell and get her power back. Suddenly she senses something and rushes to Beeman's office, where she finds Balthazar's coin. Moments later, Balthazar is looking at himself in the mirror in his office, which starts bubbling up. Suddenly the dragon's breath destroys the mirror and sends Balthazar flying, but the fire doesn't hurt him. Then John hits him with holy water which does burn the demon's face, causing Balthazar to tackle him against the wall to choke him. The attack makes John drop the dragon's breath, but he pulls out brass knuckles engraved with crosses and uses them to start beating up Balthazar, pushing him onto the table. Then he stands over Balthazar with a Bible in hand, threatening to bless him instead of exorcising him so his soul would go to heaven. Terrified, Balthazar explains that Mammon needs the Spear of Destiny to come to the human realm. At that moment Angela appears behind John and Balthazar laughs, revealing his goal was Angela and John brought her to them, so John shoots him down. After the duo leaves, a mysterious figure appears over Balthazar. The demon asks to be revived because he completed his mission, but the other being just watches him disintegrate. On their way out, Angela realizes that Isabel self-deleted so the demons wouldn't use her to bring Mammon, and now she's dead they want to use Angela instead. Suddenly she starts feeling weird and something pulls her through the elevator door and dozens of walls. John jumps through the holes to follow her, but Angela is then dragged away through the sky out of his reach. A desperate John rushes to the club and shoots the back door to demand the chair, so Midnight responds by using magic to pin him against the wall. Wriggling in pain, John explains that nobody is following the rules anymore and Midnight finally agrees to help. In the artifact storage, they retrieve a chair used for capital punishment. John takes off his shoes and after wetting the floor, Midnight electrocutes him with a bulb. This triggers a vision that shows John the man with the spear heading to the hospital, where tons of demons possessing humans are currently gathering. A demon tries to attack John, but Midnight quickly pulls him out. Afterward, Chaz prepares special bullets for John and surprises him with a plan. Meanwhile Angela is dropped at the hospital pool and finds the man with the spearhead. She shoots him until she runs out of bullets, but they have no effect and the guy drags her underwater. Moments later, John and Chaz arrive at the hospital too. Chaz goes to the water tank to bless it with a holy cross while John finds the demons, putting a lighter near the fire alarm to activate the sprinkles. Holy water starts raining in the room and the demons are weakened, so John starts shooting them to kill them all. Some demons try to attack them but John shoots them first, however he runs out of bullets. Luckily Chaz joins him and kills the remaining beasts. Then John and Chaz look for Angela, who is being drowned by the Mexican man. When she appears in hell, she hears her name whispered by Mammon, who immediately jumps on her. At that moment John enters the pool room and finds the dead body of the Mexican guy. The water starts boiling and a possessed Angela emerges, but John refuses to kill her. A fight ensues as John tries to exorcise her, but Angela drags him underwater to drown him. Chaz quickly jumps in to help and between both of them they hold Angela down on the floor. John begins chanting the incantation while Angela struggles, only for her to suddenly go back to normal. Unfortunately it isn't over, Mammon is in her stomach trying to get out. This time Chaz chants along with John and after lots of effort, it seems Mammon disappears. Suddenly Chaz is pushed back and smashed against the ceiling, instantly dying. Furious, John places the tattoos on his arms together and says an incantation to reveal whatever is hiding in the room. The ceiling appears to open up and Gabriel drops on top of John, revealing he's the divine touch that would help bring Mammon over. Gabriel thinks it's unfair that awful people like mass murderers only need to repent to go to heaven, so he wants to bring Mammon to cause lots of suffering. That way only those who are capable of surviving such a thing will be worthy of heaven. Then Gabriel blows at John to send him crashing into a glass door before grabbing the spear to start the ritual. Desperate to stop him, John prays to God and uses some glass shards to self-delete. Suddenly time freezes and Gabriel and Lucifer appears because John is the only soul he's allowed to take himself. John explains that Mammon is about to come to Earth and ruin Hell's plans, so Lucifer makes another door explode to check if it's true. Seeing Gabriel about to do the stabbing, Lucifer takes Angela away right before time unfreezes and the spear comes down. The reflection on the water shows Lucifer holding Mammon over Angela while he reminds Gabriel that the world is his. Gabriel tries to attack Lucifer but he has no power because God has abandoned him, so Lucifer sends Mammon back to hell and burns Gabriel's wings down before pushing into the pool. Now it's all over, Lucifer asks if John wants a life extension as a reward for warning him about Mammon, but instead John asks him to send Isabel's soul to heaven. Lucifer does it with just one gesture and then drags John through the floor, happy to take his soul at last. However, an invisible force stops him and Lucifer realizes that, thanks to his sacrifices, John doesn't belong in hell anymore. John's soul starts floating up to the light of heaven as he gives Lucifer the finger, but Lucifer refuses to lose his favorite soul and inserts his hands into John's lungs, removing the cancer and extending his life in hopes he'll sin again. Afterward John retrieves the spearhead and checks on Angela, who is fine. Gabriel is also alive but he's human now, so he asks John to get his revenge as he hands him the gun. However, John just punches him and lets him live, knowing being human is punishment enough. Then John says goodbye to Angela on the roof, giving her the spear to hide away from dangerous people like himself. He also has some gum instead of a cigarette. Sometime later, John visits Chaz's grave and sees his soul become an angel. In a post-apocalyptic future, Mallory hears a message on the radio about a safe shelter where everyone is welcome. She gathers her two nameless kids and with a very serious tone, she announces that they'll take a boat down the river, so it's very important for the children to never take off their blindfolds or they'll die. Then she grabs a box with their pet birds and the group leaves their home, using a string trail to reach the boat without seeing. This all started 5 years ago. Mallory is a pregnant artist who is getting a visit from her sister Jessica. While they chat, they don't pay much attention to the TV newscast reporting on unexplained mass self-deletions that started in Siberia and are now spreading across Europe. Afterward, the sisters go to the hospital for Mallory's appointment. The baby checkup goes well, and on their way out, Mallory and Jess notice a woman acting erratic and her head getting hurt against the glass window. It's only worse when they go outside. Total chaos has taken over the streets, with people running in panic, crashing their cars, and finding anything useful that can help them self-delete. It seems that whatever was affecting people in Europe has arrived in the USA. Scared, the sisters rush to their car and try to drive away, but suddenly Jessica's eyes turn a weird color and she begins driving frantically, ignoring Mallory's pleas to slow down. The crazy speed causes the car to flip and crash, but luckily both sisters survive. Mallory carefully crawls out only to see her sister step in the middle of a street, where she is killed by a passing truck. Upset and panicking, Mallory begins running with the crowd, which is getting more chaotic and scared by the second as cars start to explode around them. When Mallory is pushed down by the crowd, a woman comes out of a house to help her while ignoring her husband Douglas' objections, but before she can reach Mallory, the woman suddenly goes into a trance. As she talks to an invisible person, the woman gets inside a burning car that soon explodes. Then a man named Tom helps Mallory up and brings her to the house, where Douglas refuses to open the door. However, the house owner Greg decides to help and lets them in together with other survivors. Everyone starts sharing their theories about what is going on, like demons or the end of the world, but nobody has a proven explanation. Only one thing is for sure, looking at the entity forces people to self-delete. A couple manages to call their son and hears he is in trouble, so they leave the house to find him regardless of the danger. The TV newscast also shows that the phenomenon is spreading through the whole world, but soon all signals go out so there's no more programming or phone calls. Then the remaining survivors decide to cover all the windows to prevent anyone from looking outside. In present day, Mallory and the kids have been on the river for 6 hours. She never stops making attempts to contact people over the radio and keeps everyone covered with a blanket. She also regularly checks on the birds in the box. When the birds start getting nervous, Mallory can hear the entity whispering her name and tries her best to ignore it. Back in the past, the group suddenly hears a knock. It's a survivor called Olympia, who begs for help because she's pregnant. Douglas is against letting more people in, but Mallory calls him heartless and they decide to let her in. Mallory grabs a rifle just in case and everyone closes their eyes until they're sure Olympia is harmless. Afterward, Greg volunteers to investigate the situation by watching the outside through his security cameras. The others tie him up to the chair in front of the monitors then leave him alone. Greg concentrates to avoid looking away, and after a few minutes of nothing, his expression changes. The group hears a weird sound coming from the room and rushes inside to discover Greg fell and smashed his head, instantly dying. The others immediately destroy the screen. Later that night, Mallory can't sleep and walks around the house, hearing another weird sound. However, it turns out to be Lucy and Felix getting busy together. In the present, Mallory and the children have been on the river for 14 hours when she suddenly hears a man's voice tell her to take the blindfold off because it's safe and even promising food. Mallory tells the kids not to do it and takes out her gun to fire blindly, but all her shots miss and the man jumps on the boat to attack them while the birds start making lots of noise. The man tries to take her blindfold off, insisting the entity is beautiful, but Mallory fights him off and after lots of struggle, she manages to kill him with a machete. Back in the past, the group is starting to run out of food, and it's clear by now that help won't be coming. Mallory, Tom, Douglas, Lucy, and Charlie volunteer to go to the supermarket, hoping there's safety in numbers. They paint and cover the windows to avoid even glancing outside and then use the GPS to guide them through the streets, where they keep bumping against abandoned cars and dozens of dead bodies. As they drive around every obstacle, the GPS detects something surrounding the car. They can see a shadow shaking the car with a whooshing sound, so they begin driving faster in panic. The noises and the shaking get worse by the second, but eventually the GPS announces they have made it to the supermarket, so they rush inside and don't take the blindfolds off until they have covered all the windows. The group splits and starts gathering all kinds of supplies like food but also things for the babies. Mallory finds some birds and decides to take them as well. Douglas thinks they should stay here, but Mallory scolds him and points out it would be heartless to abandon those in the house. Suddenly the group hears someone knocking on a door and Charlie recognizes a familiar voice. It's his coworker, who accidentally got stuck in the freezer and is begging to be let out. The group isn't sure of trusting him and opens the door just a little bit to check, causing the birds to go crazy and confirm the man is actually the entity trying to trick them. The man begins yelling the entity should be seen and pushes the door, so Charlie tackles him to send him back into the fridge, allowing the others to lock it again. Then blood begins coming out from under the door, confirming Charlie is dead. The group leaves while still hearing the guy's voice begging for freedom. That night in the house, the group hears what sounds like a car being driven away, so they rush into the garage, only to discover that Lucy and Felix have gone away with their only vehicle. In the present, Mallory finally takes a break after 24 hours of non-stop rowing. However, she's too worried about the kids and soon starts rowing again, but the boat accidentally bumps against a sunken truck. The boy falls out of the boat and Mallory catches him right before he drowns, only to lose their blanket and food in the process. Mallory tries her best to warn him up with a jacket and decides to stop the boat by a shore, where she tells the kids not to move while she goes looking for supplies. Then Mallory connects some string to the boat and explores the woods until she finds a building, where she starts gathering food and a new blanket. Her string can't go on for that long, so she ties it up to the furniture while she continues to investigate. Suddenly she hears a noise and sees the string shaking before a shadow moves outside, so she immediately rushes out of the building, running through the forest as the entity begins whispering her name. Mallory blindingly shoots her gun just in case, which is heard by the little girl and makes her get off the boat to help. Fortunately, Mallory moves fast and reaches the child before the entity does, so she drags her back into the boat and yells at her for disobeying her, reminding both kids to leave Mallory behind and save themselves if things get too dangerous. In the past, another survivor knocks on their door and Olympia lets him without checking with the others first. His name is Gary, and after Tom checks he isn't hiding anything, Gary explains that only crazy patients can survive the entity. He ran away from some insane guys who escaped from a mental institution and now are out there forcing people to look at the entity, claiming it's beautiful. Douglas doesn't trust Gary and tries to force him out of the house at gunpoint, but Cheryl knocks him out and locks him in the garage while allowing Gary to stay. In the present, Mallory and the kids have been on the river for 38 hours. Mallory covers everyone with a blanket to warn them that they're approaching the rapids, which is the most dangerous part of the journey. Somebody will have to keep their eyes open to navigate, and both kids volunteer, but Mallory remembers promising Olympia she would take care of her daughter if something happened to her, and she can't bring herself to hurt her own son either. In the end, she decides they'll just risk it and go through the rapids without seeing. In the past, both Mallory and Olympia begin to go into labor at the same time. While Tom and Cheryl take the women upstairs to their room, Gary takes out a bunch of drawings of the horrifying creatures and starts making a new one, revealing he's actually one of the crazy people who escaped from the mental institution. Then he takes Mallory's birds and puts them in the fridge before tearing the papers off the windows, which Douglas sees from afar. When Tom comes down and finds the drawings, Gary immediately knocks him out. Then he opens the front garage door hoping to make Douglas see, but he quickly covers his eyes. Upstairs, Olympia and Mallory give birth to two very healthy and beautiful babies. Suddenly Gary enters the room and pulls the blinds up in front of Olympia, who immediately falls for the entity. Mallory manages to take the baby from her before Olympia runs to the window to self-delete. Afterward, Gary grabs Cheryl's face and forces her to open her eyes to the outside, causing her to also self-delete with scissors. While Mallory hides with the babies under a blanket, Douglas shows up with the rifle and does some blind shooting, hurting Gary in the arm. However, Gary quickly retaliates by jumping on Douglas to push him through the railing and stab him with the scissors. The rifle falls to the floor and Tom tries to grab it at the same time as Gary, causing the weapon to go off. Mallory hears 2 shots before someone approaches her, but luckily is Tom, who has won the fight. 5 years pass, and Mallory and Tom have been living together while raising the kids as a couple. They have a whole system in place to keep the house safe and use string to go looking for supplies when they need them. One afternoon, Mallory is out on a supply run when she hears some cars driving nearby. She waits for them to leave and rushes back to the house to tell Tom about it, so they agree they won't go out alone anymore. That night, the two receive a radio transmission saying there's a safe compound with plenty of supplies and food down the river. The voice on the radio even gives them instructions, which Tom writes down on a map. Apparently seeing will be required to cross the rapids, and the voice recommends following the sound of the forest birds because they can tell when the entity is around. Tom wants to go to the compound, but Mallory refuses because she thinks it's a trap. Sometime later, while the family goes out to look for supplies together, they hear the cars again, so Tom goes to distract them while Mallory and the kids get out safely. The drivers are a group of insane people who ask Tom to look at the entity, and when they notice Mallory and the kids, Tom opens fire on them. He manages to kill a few of them, but they shoot back at him, so if Tom wants to save his family, he has no choice but to take off the blindfold to shoot with a better aim. After killing them in seconds, Tom sees the entity and self-deletes. Mallory has a breakdown over her loss and decides it's time to leave for the shelter after all. Now it's been 42 hours on the river and the group is approaching the rapids pretty quickly. When they reach the bumpy waters, Mallory tries her best to get through, but the boat flips over and everyone falls out. Mallory calls out to the kids and finds the boy in the water, but the girl has made it to the land. Thankfully, Mallory finds her quickly because the girl has a bell that she keeps ringing. Then the trio walks through the woods where they hear the entity whispering to them using Tom's voice. Mallory tries to run away from it, only to fall down a small hill. The voice goes after the kids and the boy almost takes off his blindfold, but Mallory quickly finds him and stops him. She can't find the girl though, so she starts apologizing for yelling at her and the sound of her voice allows the girl to go back to her. Then the family follows the sounds of the birds, but they have to start running when the entity suddenly surrounds them. They fall a couple of times, but eventually they make it to the compound and the door is open before the entity can reach them. Inside the compound, Mallory's eyes are checked and soon everyone is cleared to stay. They meet the voice from the radio and Mallory discovers that the compound is a school for the blind filled with survivors but also birds, who work as an alarm. Now they can finally begin living properly. Mallory decides to name the kids. The girl is called Olympia after her mother, and the boy is named after Tom. Then Mallory opens her box and frees the birds to be with the others in the sanctuary.